There are a lot of concerns right now for Maryland basketball.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us all part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Maryland basketball has a lot of different concerns right now after their first scrimmage against UMBC. So after reading a lot about this first scrimmage against UMBC, there is a lot of different things that I think are concerning about Maryland basketball right now that are even above the score of this UMBC game. I think the number one thing right now that is really scary about Maryland basketball is the amount of injuries. Now, I haven't quite figured out this team yet. I can't tell if I think it's a much deeper team than last year and a lot of different players that can go, but we also don't have the same star power that we had last year. Like, I think Pharrell Payne is potentially a star, and we'll talk more about him later. But outside of that, I don't know how many guys that I feel awesome about being like really good basketball players. I feel good about a lot of different guys, or I feel decent about a lot of different guys being able to get us 8 to 10 points a game, a couple of assists. But last year we had a starting five of all guys that could get us 20 on any given night. And this year, I don't feel like we have that. I don't feel like that's on our team currently. And I think when you start stacking up injuries against for Maryland basketball this year, I think it hurts a lot. Even though this team's technically deeper and has more guys that feel like they can be decent, it also can't, like, let's not make this up. This team can't afford to have that many injuries. And I think heading into this season, we're hurt. We're really hurt right now for Maryland basketball. It looks like there are a bunch of different guys that aren't playing, that didn't play in the scrimmage. Now you're always going to be on the safer side when you have a basketball game that's an exhibition game, or you have a preseason football game or preseason scrimmage. Whatever the case is, you're always going to be a little bit on the little bit more the safer side of things. But it's still a concern that Maryland basketball last night only beat UMBC by 1, and a lot of our best players that, or we assume are going to be some of our best guys, aren't playing. I think it's definitely something that we have to keep an eye on. Like, just to start, I think Miles Rice, I think arguably might be our best guard next year. I think a lot of people have huge expectations for Miles Rice. He was pretty good at Indiana. He's a shot creator, and I think this Maryland team is going to need guys that can create their own shot, especially at the guard position. And we know Miles Rice has the ability to be able to do that coming from Indiana. I thought he was solid last year for Indiana, but he showed flashes of being able to be a really good Big Ten guard, the way he shoots the ball, the way he can create his own shot. His offensive game, I think, overall is definitely on the higher side of things. And he's a guy that we just can't have out. If we want to be the team, and Buzz Williams wants to be the team that we want to be, that I want to be, that all the fans want us to be, that's a concerning injury. And I'm sure a lot of you guys saw, but he was out yesterday in a boot, and nobody really knew about it going into the game. And then all of a sudden we saw Miles Rice in a boot. Now, we don't know exactly how long he's going to be out for. We don't really know the severity of the injury, but we do know he was in a boot, and we do know that he was out for the game. And so Miles Rice missing the beginning of the season could really hurt Maryland basketball. And you got to remember, we're playing a better non-conference schedule this year. In the past couple of seasons, Kevin Willard's kind of had us not doing too much. We're playing some good basketball teams, and we're playing good basketball teams early. Like, we play Georgetown in a couple of weeks on Friday, November 7th. Like, that's not that far away anymore. We play Gonzaga in out-of-conference play. We play Marquette. We play UNLV. Like, there are some good teams. We play Virginia. There's some good out-of-conference games that's like, all right, Maryland, you want to get your lineup in early. And Miles Rice was out. Also, David Coit was out. That's another big one. He was also injured. He's expected to be one of our guards that plays a ton of minutes. I know he's undersized. Last year at Kansas didn't get maybe the opportunity that he wanted to, but I think we all agree he can be a really solid piece for us. And then we were also missing a guy that is expected to start in Isaiah Watts. So our three backcourt guys that are expected to have a huge impact were all out. Every single one of them were out for Maryland basketball. So it's like, shoot, who is healthy going into the year in the backcourt? We don't have a ton of guys healthy, and this is where the depth starts to come in for Maryland basketball. There are a lot of different guys that can play and play at somewhat of we're guessing a decent level. Like there's different guys back there. Like we played the kid Del Garmio. We got to see Andre Mills play. We got to see Darius Adams, a talented freshman, play. We have different bodies, and that's why I'm excited about it. But when you start slimming it down, it just becomes more and more scary. And I think the injuries are starting to become a concern because we already lost Marquise Passmore for the entire season, a kid that I thought last year really highly recruit. Didn't do too much last year for Kansas, but people were expecting a big jump from him, and I was expecting a big jump. Thought he could end up being a pretty good player for us. Out for the year, and you have these three guards that are all injured right now, and it's like you're relying on a lot of guys that we probably don't want to go to yet. And I think this is a veteran kind of led team in terms of guys that have been around college basketball, and there's a lot of different players like that. But when you start having guys hurt, it's a concern early on. I think it's a pretty obvious concern right now for Maryland basketball. So I don't want to act like this isn't something. And then Solomon Washington is also coming back from an ankle sprain. He's expected to be out for the beginning of the season. He's another potential starter coming from Texas A&M. I know he's one of Buzz's more favorite guys, or best defensive player, and we know Buzz Williams hangs his hat on defense. So the amount of injuries this Maryland basketball team has is honestly scary right now. It's like very concerning right now. And you might say, hey, it's going to be early year, but you got to remember in basketball and college sports in general, this isn't the NBA. We ain't playing 82 games. You get one chance to play the non-conference schedule. You get one chance to make the tournament, and literally there's not a single game that doesn't matter for your resume. There's not one. There's not a single game that if you win, you're going to be like, shoot, we won that game, or shoot, that doesn't help us. Sure, some games help a lot more than the others, but if you go play, let's say UNLV November 25th, and all of a sudden that's a game we drop, I'm telling you, at the end of the season, if we're pushing for the tournament, which that's where this team plans to be, that's a game that we're absolutely going to want back. And so you want to win as many games early as you possibly can. And you want to win as many games just in the college basketball season as you possibly can, because you want to start building that resume. And so you can't sit here and be like, oh, it's an early season thing, because we play good teams early. We play Georgetown on November 7th. Like I said, there's good games to play early on. So we shouldn't sit here and be like, oh, like it's kind of whatever. Like we're going to get those guys back. No, this is concerning. It affects the entire season. And then this is a completely new basketball team. None of these guys have played together, or I don't want to say none of them have played together. We have a couple of Texas A&M guys that have played together, but none of them you guys know what I mean. There's not a lot of different players that have played. This is a whole new team. And so you want to start getting some type of rhythm with this team and with the lineups in. And Buzz Williams wants to start understanding what do guys do well. And so the fact that guys are missing time and scrimmages against UMBC, that hurts. And I didn't even talk about the fact that we only won this game by 1 point. UMBC, if you're beating UMBC by 1 point, we got a lot to work on. And I know guys are hurt, but we got to play with the guys that we got to play with. There's a lot of things to fix if you're only beating UMBC by 1 point. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the performances. Maybe I'll make that the last segment instead. There were some good to come from the scrimmage too, but I think there was a lot more concern. And so we'll continue to talk about that. But I want to talk about Maryland football's game against Indiana coming up this weekend. I think in Maryland's best shot, Mike Loxley's best shot at an upset might be this weekend. We'll talk about that next. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app is made super simple. You could even see the exact view from your seat before buying. I love zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKED on College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the Game Time app today. So Maryland has a very interesting game this weekend against number 2 Indiana. And let me say this. I don't think Mike Loxley has had like a super signature win in a while, a win that we're going to hang our hat on, a win that we're going to feel really good about. I think this game against Indiana might be Mike Loxley's best chance to beat a team and have a memorable win that makes the fans feel like, oh my gosh, we won that game. I think this might be our best chance to be able to do something like this. They're the number 2 team in the country. And look, I think Indiana's a good team. I do. Like, they're obviously good. They've beaten the brakes off of pretty much everyone. But I do think there's something to be said about this Indiana team not being a number 2 team in the country. And you guys can say I'm wrong, and I had an Indiana fan in my comments. I honestly don't care. But there's something to be said, and I have an opinion on college football. There's something to be said for teams that are really well coached, have talent in the right areas, than teams that are just straight really, really talented and that maybe aren't quite as well coached as a team like Indiana, but they just have dudes where it makes it like, how are we going to compete? And Indiana falls to me on the first side of things. They have a bunch of good players. Don't get me wrong. Their quarterback might be the number 1 player in the draft. They have an awesome receiver, that kid Elijah Sherrod. Like they have a lot of really good players. Roman Hemby's running the backfield for them. But to me, Indiana's not a team that's like, oh, we're just going to get outclassed completely in terms of talent. Like, we're not just going to get outclassed in terms of talent. Like, I don't think that. I think they're more talented. I do. I think they're better. But there's something to be said if we were playing Alabama, Alabama's like 4 or 5 right now in the country, something like that. I'd be like, this is going to be a really tough one because physically, talent-wise, they're just going to outclass us in a lot of different areas. Up front, the receivers, whatever the case is. This Indiana team, I think, is more talented than us. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they quite outclass us the same way that a typical number 2 team in the country often does, which makes it really hard for a Maryland football team to be able to compete. Like, if I look at last year's big games, games where it was like those teams are really good. Like, when I think of over the last couple of years, when I'm like, yeah, those teams are just a little bit like they just kind of are out our class. Like, I think of Penn State when we lost 44-7 last year. I think of Oregon when we lost 39-18, where it's like talent wise, it's just kind of hard for us to match up with teams like that. I don't really think about this Indiana team like that. Even last year when we played them, and I know they beat us pretty good when you look at the score, 28-42. When you watch that game was a lot closer than it kind of seemed than the final score ended up being. And believe it or not, 42-28 really isn't that much of a difference in score. Like it's really not. It's a couple of touchdowns. And last year they were number 10 in the country, and they're better this year. But my whole point is this is Mike Locksley's best shot. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to win this game. But if we're ever going to upset somebody that feels noteworthy, if we're ever going to do something this season that makes our fans excited about what we have in the future, that hopefully keeps people around, it's this game against Indiana. I really believe that. I think it's this game against Indiana. I think this is our biggest opportunity to beat somebody that we feel really good about. Michigan on November 22nd, we struggle with teams like Michigan that control the line of scrimmage the way they do, that play the style of football the way they do. Like sometimes beating a team like Michigan, like reminds me of Penn State over the last couple of years, that has been something that we struggled with. And I'm not saying we don't struggle with teams like Indiana. I just think there are cracks in Indiana's football team that I'll talk about over the next couple of days that we can potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen, we can potentially exploit. I think they're really well coached. I do. And I think their quarterback's really good, and I think they have good players. But I just think there's different spots where we can potentially make up for it. And when you look at this game, we also get them at home. Mike Locksley ain't probably beating a team like this on the road. That's just what it is. But you get these guys at home. It doesn't help that our crowd isn't the best, but you still get some of that home field advantage. I don't want to sit here and act like that isn't part of it. We still get that home field advantage, but I do think we'll have the opportunity to potentially let this game be close. I do think that's a possibility, and we know Maryland has shown that they can turn over the ball, that they can make people turn over, and create a couple turnovers in the game that can be key. But this Indiana team has dominated a lot of teams. They just crushed UCLA. They beat Michigan State pretty good. They beat Oregon pretty good. But I look at that Iowa score and I'm like, can Maryland somehow muster up a similar game to Iowa, where Iowa's quarterback didn't even really play that well? They were just able to do a couple of different things on the ground, create a couple big plays that allowed them, and their defense was able to play well and keep Fernando Mendoza in check. And it only ended up being 2015. Like I'm looking at something like that. And Iowa's been pretty solid this year, but I think there's a potential for something like that to be done against this Indiana team. I just think they're not like, when you think about being a number 2 team in the country, and I think of number 2 teams in the past, I don't think they're quite that. I just don't. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they end up winning the national championship. Just don't see it right now. Like when you think of a number 2 team in the country, you think of a team that is going to win the national championship. And everyone's going to say they're absolutely title contenders. But when we get to the playoff, we'll see what happens. And it's a little bit early. Sounds like a lot of hate on the Indiana team, but that's just how I see it. Let's talk about who played well. I'm going to change the last segment. Who played well because I didn't get to it. Who played well in the Maryland basketball scrimmage? Who did I think did a lot of good things? We'll talk about that next. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same game parlays for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making the late push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. There's so many different things to bet on FanDuel, guys, so make sure you guys go over to FanDuel right now. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's talk a little bit about Maryland basketball. Who played well this weekend for Maryland basketball? What were the takeaways outside of the injuries? Because I dove a lot into that. So I do want to talk about some of the guys that actually ended up playing really well. And so the best part about this team right now, the guy that's really good that I think is one of the better players in the country and in the Big Ten is Pharrell Payne, man. Pharrell Payne's a really good basketball player. The Texas A&M big man, or the transfer from Texas A&M big man that Buzz Williams converted here, is going to be huge for Maryland basketball. And he has a chance to have his biggest season yet. I think he will have his biggest season yet. I'll go ahead and say that. He was good last year. I don't think he was like great. I thought he was a good player last year. Like he was a really good player. I think this year's going to be great. Like last year he averaged 10 points, 5 rebounds, which is good for a team like Texas A&M that goes to the tournament. Like that's pretty good. But if you look at what he did down the stretch against Michigan, against Yale, he was huge for Texas A&M. He had 26 points against Michigan in this, what was that? The second round of the tournament. First round against Yale, he had 25. Like he had some big games down the stretch for Maryland I'm telling you, I'm way all over the place with all the football games, all the Maryland basketball transfers for Texas A&M. He had some huge games and he had a big game in the scrimmage and he looks good. 6'9", 250 pounds. He was the best player on the court last night, and it wasn't necessarily really close. But you expect him to dominate against a team like UMBC, and that's what he did. He ended the night with 26 points, but the more impressive thing is you can have 26 points and not be very efficient. That's something I do want to pay attention this year because there's a lot of different guys in college basketball and in the NBA that can score but don't necessarily do it super efficiently yet. And Pharrell Payne is a guy that went 9 to 12, 9 rebounds, and 3 blocks. So there's a couple of different things there. Like I said, efficient. 9 to 12 shooting against UMBC is kind of what we expect for a guy like that. We wouldn't expect much less from a guy like that and what he brings to Maryland basketball and his talent. 9 rebounds. I think he has the potential to be our leading rebounder next year. I think he will end up being. And he also had 3 blocks. So that was definitely good to see for Maryland basketball. But right now, Pharrell Payne looks like by far our best guy. He looks like your go-to guy. I haven't got to see a ton of him play a ton, but he's going to be probably our leading scorer this year. He's going to be an all Big Ten guy. Like I don't see any reason he's not. To me, he's kind of in the mold of a between a Derek Queen and a Julius Reese. I think he's a little bit closer to Julian Reese. I think he's a little closer to Julian Reese than he is to Derek Queen, but I think he does have a little bit of that Derek Queen post game and different things like that. Like I do think he has that ability, but I think he has the shot blocking of Julian Reese, and the size of Julian Reese and the ability to run the floor like Julian Reese. I don't think he quite has a skill level like Derek Queen, but I think he does have a little bit of that. And so to me, he fits in really well. I think this year he's going to be a tad better than Julian Reese was. But I like Derek Queen's a different type of talent. It's hard to compare someone to. I know I just compared him to both of those guys. Obviously, he's a different player, but he gives off a lot of that traditional kind of center feel, the ability to shot block, make shots down low, give it to him if we need to get a bucket. I think Pharrell Payne's going to be really good. 26 points in a 1-point win. We don't win that game. I don't know if we win that game without him. And then freshman guard Darius Adams led Maryland in minutes apparently, but he played pretty well. And I think there's a couple different things with him that are concerning, but also really kind of exciting is he didn't really shoot the ball well, but he did a lot of other things well. He shot 3 of 13 from the floor, which isn't great, obviously, but he did do a really good job of attacking the rim. And him coming into college basketball, I wasn't sure how much he was going to do this with his slender build, but he shot what? It was 13 free throws, 11 to 13 from the free throw line. So I came in this year, I was like, I'm not sure how much he'll actually end up going to the rim. I thought he'll be more of a shooter, but you don't really know. Like I'm not diving into Darius Adams, watching every play of him in high school, so it's hard to kind of gauge off of reading and kind of watching a couple of highlights. But I thought he was more of a shooter than a get to the rim guy, but he shot a ton of free throws against UMBC, and that's a big part of the reason why he scored a lot of points and was second on our team in scoring and shot it efficiently. He was also 2 of 6 from the 3-point range with 7 rebounds, so he did a lot of things well, even though he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. And he's a guy that I could absolutely see that happening this year, where he has a couple of poor shooting games, but if he's getting to the line and getting points that way, you can get past the bad shooting day. Like you can get past your slumps. I think that's really big for him to be able to do. I remember Mel Trimble always would get to the line. Anthony Cowan, those guys would attack dudes. Those guys would attack the rim, get to the line, and shoot the ball efficiently from there, that really helped relieve a lot of the pressure. And I'm hoping Darius Adams, who looks like he's going to be one of our bigger types of players early on, can really make it happen for Maryland basketball. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.